We're so excited to have you here with us today. Speak on behalf of Paula and myself, just to say welcome. If you are new and joining us, just a quick introduction. My name is Stacy Fritz. I am a Believe Big advocate, one of our patient advocates, and Paula Weinberg is our expert, our integrative oncology nutritionist. And today we are going to layer in another component of nutrition. Welcome, Cheryl. Welcome, Susie. Welcome, Ginny. Malaysia. Oh my
No, isn't that amazing?
goodness. Wow. Welcome. Welcome. And we're so happy that you are here today. My introduction will be quick. You now know how to use the chat feature. I ask you, if you don't mind, we will use the chat feature at the end. We're going to listen to Paula's information on the front end, and then the back end will open it up. I'll moderate the questions. And quick reminder, if we don't have a fast, easy answer for you during the Q&A, you will automatically get, by registering for the talk today, you will get the recording, you will get any handouts, and you will also get an answer from Paula directly if it's something that we can't get to in the short period of time that we're on together. So that said, welcome. Last time we spoke about why does food matter? Paula took us on a little bit of a journey explaining on why it's so important to understand why we need food and what it's all about. And today we're going to take another look at why the quality of food matters. So without any more time, we're going to pass it off to Paula, and she's going to share with us why the quality of our food matters.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's another great Wednesday to be together. I'm going to get to share my screen here in just 1 minute. Okay, can everyone see that? Are we all rolling on the same screen? Everyone can see my food for thought? Okay, Stacy, can you see? Okay, great. All right, perfect. All right, we're going to dive right in because we've got a lot to talk about this morning, actually this afternoon. Last time we were together, I spoke about why food matters and why and how what we consume on a daily basis impacts our cellular function and how we feel.
Paula, let me stop you for 1 second. We've got a lot of background noise. I just want to make sure that everybody can see and hear okay. So I'm not sure if it's the microphone. We just want to make sure that all is clear. There's a lot of static.
Oh, I don't hear any. Do you still hear it?
Nope, all gone.
Okay, so I have a feeling that was my holding my note cards in front of the computer.
All
So
good.
the
All good.
shuffling of noise. So, okay, I've got to adjust myself a little bit. All right. Okay, so last time we were together, we were talking about why and how what we eat impacts our body and how we feel. So today we're going to continue on that topic, and we're going to keep these things in mind as we listen. The purpose of these sessions is to give you information, some science, some facts, things that can help you make better choices about what to eat. I know that you're all in different places on your health journey, and I want you to take a deep breath and know that if you're here, there's a reason, and rest assured that you will take away today exactly what it is you need to learn. If you have any questions or something feels confusing, just jot it down in the chat box and we can try to talk it through at the end. And keep the feedback coming through the talk if there's something that you really enjoy learning about, or if there's something you have a question about, or if there's something you just want to, give us feedback about, something you already knew and you wanted to confirm that. That would be great feedback for us. This work is really meaningful to Stacy and I, and we want to make sure we're connecting with you. So keep the chat box going. Now let's jump into why food matters and food quality. Food is like a language, information that connects each cell of our bodies to the world around us. Consuming food as it grows in nature enhances and enforces that connection we have to the natural world and gives our cells information that is easy to process and not confusing. When we think about our ancestors' relationship with food, our grandmothers, great grandmothers, 100 years ago, most people grew a lot of their own food, and you can be sure that the first grocery stores in the early 1900s were not overflowing with packaged shelf-stable foods. They much more resembled today's farmers markets. So take, for example, an apple. When you eat an apple just as it was grown in nature, that's information your body easily recognizes. Eating that apple connects you back to nature and makes your cells happy. They get fiber, water, phytochemicals, antioxidants, vitamins, and even some minerals, all organized in a fashion by Mother Nature, the same way as our bodies. The plant cells of that apple work in perfect harmony with our animal cells. However, when you eat a processed version of that apple, say an apple cinnamon cereal bar, the message to our cells begins to get a little muddled amidst the sugars and the other processing of the apple. Like the childhood game of telephone, where the message can get more and more scrambled with each person's retelling, so it is with food. The more manufacturing, the more scrambled the message to our cells. The best food for our bodies are whole foods, minimally processed by man. The food quality conversation always begins with whole foods. Because the information in our food will dictate the messages delivered to our cells, quality is of the utmost importance. So if food is like a language or a code for our cells, how happy do you think our cells are when they receive the information butylate hydroxytoluene, or BHT? BHT is a preservative added to many of the packaged goods you see here, and maybe even some you have in your pantry. It helps keep them fresh. Your body's probably not too happy with BHT. It's unrecognizable by the body since it was created in a laboratory, and it appears nowhere in nature. Man-made chemicals were never intended to become a mainstay of our diets, yet that's exactly what's happened. BHT is not only a frequent ingredient in gum and snacks and processed meats, it's also a preservative added to animal feed and drugs, creating another hidden exposure that's never really listed on any food label. Simply giving your body the nourishment it needs allows for optimal gene expression, and that starts with choosing whole foods. With optimal food intake, it's possible to quiet those genetic hiccups that might otherwise bring a very different outcome. Just like the agouti mice experiment that we talked about last time, giving the pregnant agouti mouse mother a prenatal vitamin silenced the expression of the agouti gene in many of her offspring. The DNA between mother and child remained the same, but the nutrients changed the outcome. So by now you hopefully have the concept down that food is information for our bodies, a direct line of communication from Mother Nature straight to our cells. And that's exactly why food matters so much. From the inside out, food dictates how our genes express themselves, how we feel, and even how we look. By choosing whole foods, we connect ourselves back to nature and supply ourselves with information that's easily recognizable and used. Another way to define what a whole food is to talk about what it's not. Sometimes defining the opposite can give us a clearer picture of the story. Processed foods came on the scene during the Industrial Revolution around 1850. And during that time, factories and machines began to produce food for the first time. It's crazy to think about. Only a little over 100 years before I was born was the first time food was made in a factory. In 1870, porcelain mills crushed wheat kernels and separated the wheat and the germ and the bran from the other components of the grain, giving rise to the very first processed food, white flour. The flour left behind after removing the germ and the bran, which are the nutrient and fiber-rich parts, is simply starch. It's been stripped of about 25 nutrients lost during the processing. When people back in the 1800s began consuming this flour, illness quickly set in, and diseases of vitamin deficiency like beriberi and pellagra became widespread. You don't hear of these diseases anymore because the government quickly stepped in and decided to synthetically add back a handful of the 25 nutrients lost in the processing of wheat to stave off the worst of these diseases. So when you see enriched on a package, you know you're eating a processed food that required synthetic vitamins to be added back in order for it to still qualify as food. But the cat was out of the bag, so to speak. Once white flour was introduced, it was cheap and popular, and it spread like wildfire. Processed cereals, breads, pasta, pizza, pie crust, cookies, cakes, you name it, they've become the mainstay of the standard American diet. When we look closely at these foods, we find they are little more than starch, empty calories with a few nutrients synthetically sprayed on during manufacturing, plus a whole lot of herbicides and pesticides, which we'll circle back to in a minute. Not only is white flour lacking in any real nutrients, it's highly glycemic. It's quickly converted into sugar for fuel by the body, and it raises our blood sugars accordingly. In the scheme of our evolution, the drastic changes that have occurred in our food supply over the last 150 years have left our cells dazed and confused. We already know what happens when our DNA doesn't get what it needs, whether it's inadequate vitamins or minerals, or whether it's exposed to too many toxins. Genetic damage starts to build up. This damage to our DNA increases the likelihood of developing different ailments, from premature aging and heart disease to cancer and dementia. One of the best ways to ensure that our cells are getting the nutrients they need is to select and eat only whole foods. So let's go over a couple quick examples of whole foods versus processed foods, just to be sure you guys are with me. Here we've got a potato versus chips, an apple versus a fruit roll-up, chicken versus chicken nuggets, and a whole grain versus a highly processed breakfast cereal. So part 2 of this conversation is going to shift to organic versus conventional and GMO foods. It's a natural extension of our whole food discussion because selecting whole foods is step number 1, but understanding the quality of even whole foods needs further explanation. Whole foods can be plants or animals, right? Celery is a whole food, spinach leaves are a whole food, as is a piece of steak or fillet of fish. However, how that animal or plant was grown and cared for is important to know, because whatever that animal ate or ingested, you too will ingest when you eat it. Whatever that plant was treated with to help keep it from pests so that it could make it to harvest, you too will ingest. I'll give you a spoiler alert. You're going to want to look for organic produce and also wild pasture organic animal proteins. I'm going to tell you first about plants. And we're going to start with this story from Michael Pollan's book, The Omnivores Dilemma. It's a great book, and I highly encourage you guys to read this book if you want to know more about how our food comes to be in America. Basically, the beginning of the book, Mr. Pollan describes a trip he took to a 15,000-acre farm in Idaho to find out how potatoes were grown. He sees a farm, large farm, divided into small sections. 135 acres, if that's a small section, that are controlled by a bank of computers. And from that bank of computers, the farmer can distribute water or pesticides at the flip of a switch. One chemical they use is called Monitor, and it's used to control pests that want to get to the potatoes. It's so toxic to the human nervous system that no one's allowed on the field for 5 days after it's sprayed. If something goes wrong with the machinery, they still won't go on the field. They'll let the whole section of crop die because it's that toxic to humans. And because all these chemicals penetrate inside the potatoes have to sit in giant sheds for 6 months after harvesting to let the toxins gradually fade until they're deemed safe to eat. You'll never look at a French fry or potato chip the same way again after reading that story. Pesticides, fungicides, and herbicides are sprayed on fruits, vegetables, grains, nuts, and seeds, pretty much anything grown for harvest and sale. They're toxic to our cells and tissues. They disrupt our endocrine systems and encourage weight gain. They send the wrong signals at the wrong time once they're inside our body, and they result in our hormones going haywire. These agrochemicals, as they're now called, are a mainstay and harsh reality of modern conventional farming. Better chemicals means better profit margins for farmers. One of the more famous and widely used modern day pesticides appearing on farms across America is glyphosate, or Roundup. Glyphosate is heavily used on wheat, oats, chickpeas, corn, soybeans, beans, and many other crops. In 2015, glyphosate was classified as a probable human carcinogen, yet it remains widely in use today. The Environmental Working Group reports finding high levels of glyphosate on foods like Quaker Oats, Cheerios, and Sabra hummus. Glyphosate's another good reason to steer clear of breakfast cereals. As we learned in part 1, they're highly processed foods with little nutrient value, And now we also know the grains used for cereals are treated with glyphosate just before harvest. It helps to kill the crop quickly and dry it out fast to hasten the harvesting process. And the priority that shines through again is money. Profits are at the core of why and how our food is grown and manufactured the way it is. As if spraying our most common crops with probable carcinogens wasn't enough, genetically modified organisms came on the scene in the 1990s. For some that are younger, that might mean a lifetime of having consumed GMO foods. In 2015, GMO science made its way to the animal kingdom as well, getting approval for genetically modified salmon. GMO foods are foods where scientists take DNA from a plant or an animal with a desirable trait and insert it into another plant or animal in order to create a brand new organism, one with a higher yield or a better quality. And the result of that is better profits. GMO foods are often referred to as Franken Foods, and they're behind our abundant food supply. They've been banned in other countries, including Europe, and the depth of using GMO foods and the impact of that on our own DNA is still unknown and unfolding as we speak. For these reasons and so many more that I don't have time to delve into, you'll want to choose organic produce. Is organic produce free from all synthetic farming chemicals and a perfect food? No, not really. But unless you're going to grow your own produce, it's probably the best option we have available in a store. There are also different categories of organic foods, like certified organic, 100% certified organic, and made with organic ingredients. Sound confusing? You bet. It's probably not a coincidence that it's difficult to ascertain exactly what we're really eating. And this is a guide to help you know what you're buying when you're in the store. All you have to do is look at the sticker on the produce and it will tell you exactly what you're getting, even if the sign, in the section isn't clear. So conventional produce has only 4 digits and it usually starts with the number 3 or 4, and that's featured in the center of the slide. Organic produce always starts with a 9 and GMO produce starts with an 8. So, you want to look for a 9 and you want to avoid the 8s. Next, we're going to switch over to talking about animal products. Today's conventionally raised animals experience a really different life than the animals of yesteryear that grazed in open fields of grass with plenty of sunshine. Cattle today are raised in concentrated animal feeding operations called CAFOs, densely packed feedlots where they're confined to a pen, taught to eat from a trough, injected with antibiotics and growth hormones, and often live in very unsanitary and toxic conditions. CAFO cattle aren't eating grass as Mother Nature intended. Instead, they feed on a blend of mostly GMO corn, which we already learned was heavily sprayed by glyphosate or Roundup. And it's mixed with any of the following for the cattle feed. It's mixed with chicken or cattle manure, stale pastries, cardboard, peanut skins, cement dust, chocolate, candy, feathers, waste from brewing beer, and more. What's fed to the animals in the CAFOs is not only unconscionable, it's easy to understand why they need antibiotics and growth hormones to survive and why consuming the meat can be so inflammatory. You see, cattle aren't designed to eat corn, and in fact, it makes them sick. But cattle that eat corn get fat quickly, which means more profits. Eating the corn blend also significantly affects the kinds of fats in the cattle themselves, and it shifts their percentage toward high levels of pro-inflammatory omega-6 fats. The chemicals and toxins that the animals are fed and exposed to in the CAFOs are also concentrated in these fats, and then the meat and the fat are consumed by people. Conventionally raised chickens are subject to the same types of conditions as CAFO cattle. They are raised in sheds in highly overcrowded conditions with little ability to move, often pecking each other, and never seeing sunshine or a blade of grass. They're fed an unnatural diet of pesticide-laden grains with a side of antibiotics and growth hormones. I think you get the picture. For these same reasons, we have to be wary of the eggs and dairy products that are coming from the CAFO animals. They can be tainted with growth hormones, antibiotics, and chemicals to which the animals were exposed both through their diet and environment. The nutrient profile dairy products from CAFO animals is much different than that of the dairy products from grass-fed cattle. I was asked last time about dairy consumption and wanted to expand a little bit on the answer I gave. Dairy is a really big topic unto itself, and there are many things to consider in assessing whether dairy is a good food to eat. Hopefully, you've witnessed why dairy from conventionally raised animals in CAFO feedlots is not a healthy choice for anyone because of how the animals are raised and fed. Organic dairy is better, fermented organic dairy even better, and some say raw organic dairy is the best. Raw dairy is another topic as well, and it actually can't be sold legally in Maryland and several other states. It has its own set of risks and a lot of potential for bacterial contamination. But circling back to whether or not to eat dairy, the short answer is that dairy consumption has been linked to elevated levels of IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor, and cancer progression in certain cancers like breast, prostate, and colon cancer. As I mentioned last time, we're the only species that consumes another species' milk, and the primary purpose of feeding babies milk is to stimulate growth. There are also some components of dairy like lactose and casein, which can create a host of digestive issues, inflammation, and possibly promote tumor invasiveness. Dairy, if consumed, should definitely be organic and eaten in small amounts. Learn to listen to your body and seek the advice of a knowledgeable integrative practitioner to guide you more specifically for you and your particular cancer. There is a product called A2 milk, and there also is goat milk, which has different proteins than cow milk, and for some, it makes it more easily digested. But again, the most conservative approach regarding dairy would be to limit or avoid dairy, particularly during active cancer. Certainly, everyone should avoid non-organic dairy products. There are a lot of other ways to get your calcium besides dairy. Fish is the last group we'll discuss today. Farm fish should also be avoided. They are fed GMO, corn, and soy, as well as highly contaminated fish meal, which means they often have health issues requiring antibiotics, and they also test positive for high levels of mercury and PCBs. Farm salmon is also dyed pink to resemble wild salmon because the flesh of farm salmon are typically an unappealing, dull gray color. If all of this is exhausting to think about and learn about, I couldn't agree more. Since when should it take a degree in nutrition to even begin skimming the surface of understanding what we actually eat? All of this has happened in the last 150 years, so it's easy to understand why our cells are dazed and confused, our genetic expression has been impacted, and our rates of disease are skyrocketing. So we're going to sum it all up with some takeaways because this was a lot of information. We're going to focus on eating whole natural foods. The best foods don't come with a list of ingredients or fancy boxes telling you why they're so special. The best food and the best people don't brag about how great they are. They just are what they are. A head of broccoli, an apple, a chicken breast. If there's a long list of ingredients, be wary, especially if it's more than 10. Set the food down if you can't pronounce any of the ingredients, or if you see numbers in the list, like red dye number 40, or if you can't explain what any of the ingredients are to a child. Eat organic, fresh foods as often as possible. If you don't know where to begin with eating organic or how to prioritize eating organic, we got you. You're going to be receiving a handout called the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen, which is a great starting point. But overall, use common sense. If something has a thick peel and you don't eat the peel, like a banana or an avocado, you don't have to worry so much about whether it's organic. But if the opposite is true, where you eat the entire fruit and it's heavily sprayed like berries, you'll want to be sure to choose organic. You also want to avoid GMO foods. And when you're in the grocery store, again, be a savvy consumer. Look on the tags of what you're buying and make sure that you know what you're actually purchasing. And avoid conventionally raised fish and animal products. They're full of inflammatory fats, toxins, and they're much lower in nutrients. Eating for health is not about perfection. Please try not to stress about doing everything right all the time. The purpose of these talks is to give you information to empower you to make better choices, because let's face it, we're all eating every day. And whether we actively think carefully about what to eat, or if we just eat out of habit and routine, we're still making choices. Giving our bodies the right fuel is a responsibility and a privilege. I feel blessed to have the option to buy organic fresh foods. Am I perfect at it? Absolutely not. I do the best I can with what's available, and I leave the rest up to God. Stress in life is unavoidable, but I urge you to use this information to help you make good choices, not to weigh you down. So I'm going to end with a couple quotes. Pick the best food available, but once chosen, eat it with a happy heart, bless it to your needs, and enjoy it with gusto and gratitude. The worst thing you can eat at mealtime is worry. If you enjoyed learning about some of this and want to dive in deeper to what really lies behind some of the food that's on our shelves and in our stores in America, you can read some of these books that will give you a deeper look into that. They're all great. And now it is time for questions.
My goodness. Wow. Wow. So before we launch the questions at you, Paula, for our folks that are sitting on the class today, go ahead and put in the chat before we dive into what we don't know. Put in one thing that you learned today that maybe you didn't know before you heard Paula speak. Just give you a minute to do that. And while you are putting that into the chat, I just want to say this. That was a lot of information. I get that. And so our job now is to take what Paula said and let's put it into real-time action items, right? So that's what we're going to do in just a moment. So I don't want you to worry. I want you to put your feet flat on the floor and I want you to take a deep breath in. You've got this, all right? So here's some of the things, Paula, that they learned that they didn't know before. The barcode reading is something new to me, and I'm going to reiterate that. And don't forget, you get the recording of this as well and a summary and all the takeaways. The barcode was great. Looking at the stickers that are placed on organic foods with the number 9. Kristen said, bye fries. Wendy said she did not know about CAFO. I have to tell you, as much as I know about nutrition, I didn't know that terminology either. That was a new word for me. Ginny, there was an article debating whether or not farm fish is better compared to wild caught because of the sea contamination. That was something that maybe that's a question, not necessarily a takeaway. Kristen also is going to look at French fries differently now. She's my girl, French fries. That they color bad salmon. I know that color pink is not really a natural color. And that's about all for the takeaways, which was great. So we're gonna get into some of our questions, and we'll ask Paula with the caveat of this. Because this was a lot, we talked about, we went from whole food discussion, and then we moved it to even a stronger conversation about those whole foods and breaking it down to conventional, GMO, organic. So there's a lot going on there. And again, the idea is not to overwhelm anybody on the call. We're going to take this apart and deconstruct it and add it in and kind of process it the way we need to, so that when we go to the grocery store, maybe we can do one small change. We don't have to overhaul everything this week. All right. All right. First question, Paula. The listener thought that farmed shrimp was okay. How is it different? And it also pairs with another question another listener asked, which was, is farm fish from Whole Foods okay? Can you break that one down for us?
Sure. Great questions. So farmed fish and farmed shrimp, as I mentioned, they're raised in these confined areas in water that's not necessarily, open water like the ocean. And they're raised kind of in these similar, even though they're in water, they're raised in similar kind of unsanitary, overcrowded conditions and fed unnatural things to kind of hasten the process, because they have these fish, they're just fish for sale. And so they want to get them growing and ready for harvest and, basically killing them so they can move on into the food chain. So they want to move that process along as quickly as possible. Corn and lots of other unnatural substances for a fish to be eating are what kind of makes that process go fast and quickly and makes them profitable, because it yields a bigger fish. And it also yields different nutrient profile of the animal that we eat, the fish that we eat. So yeah, they are different, and different stores take different steps and different measures to ensure the kind of quality of product they put out. So I would generally stay away from farmed fish anywhere. That's the ideal, is to stick with wild. When and if you can, is choose wild seafood. That's always the best. And yes, there are contaminants in the open waters now. There is no pure seafood. It just doesn't exist in our world. Sadly, it's just toxic everywhere. So yes, you're going to get some levels of contaminants in a wild fish as well, but you are getting the benefit of better nutrient profiles, better lower inflammatory fats, and just a better overall quality product. So there's risk with both things with from sea, creatures, and I trust Whole Foods better than most stores. But again, even at Whole Foods, I would still choose wild if you can.
Good questions. There was actually 3 questions about that one, Paula. So maybe we'll follow that up in a more detailed. But the takeaway, I'm guessing, is out of all of our choices, the way to go is to choose wild caught if you're going to go for seafood, right, or for fish.
Yeah. If
All
you
right.
can, that's the preferable. And if you have to do a farmed, choose a very reputable place that you trust that they are getting a better quality, and scrutinizing what kind of conditions and what kind of feed the fish are subject to.
Great answer. All right. One of our listeners maybe didn't understand what exactly CAFO is, a CAFO.
Yeah. So circling back to that, I can even bring up my slide again. Let me see if I can pull that up. I think a picture is better than anything. Let's just go back to that. So that is it's short for concentrated animal feeding operation. And why it's been named a name and why it is a thing, a CAFO, is because the volume of meat we eat here in the United States is off the charts compared to what it is in other countries. We are huge consumers of animal protein, comparative to, our European or other counterparts. They use meat in a very different way than we do. We center our plate and our life around meat. So in order to meet the demand of this growing population, they had to start really raising animals in a different way to accommodate that. So animals couldn't just be, a few animals grazing out in a field in sunshine like they used to be. There's not enough time for that. We need more animals than that. So they started to raise them in these CAFOs where they are really overcrowded. They are fed unnatural products to them. They're fed a combination, as you probably heard me say, it's grains that are treated, they're GMO grains. They're treated with lots of chemicals. Plus, they add in all of those various things that you heard of, from cement dust to feathers to candy and leftover scraps of crazy things. So they're fed an unnatural diet. Cows don't even really know how to feed from a trough. They have to be taught that in these CAFOs. They don't know how to do this. So they're trained to do that. Michael Pollan in his book goes into how they actually have to, in this book, The Omnivores Dilemma, how they actually have to open up their guts and let off some of the pressure of the gas that builds up from eating this unnatural diet, because they literally, some of them kind of tend toward almost exploding if they don't let off some of that pressure. So there's some pretty graphic and disturbing stuff in here that, he just witnessed in following his cow through. He bought a cow and followed it through the whole process. So anyway, I hope that explains what a CAFO is. And that's where the majority, if you see like USDA grade A, it's all coming from a CAFO, unless it says grass-fed or organic. Organic just means it was fed organic corn in most cases. So it's a better, cleaner version of grains that the animal's eating, because again, grains fatten the cow much faster than they would get fat on a grass-fed diet. So it's all about money and moving the cows through the process. So organic is a little step better, but it's really not the optimal what you should seek. So they're much different animals than those that are raised out in nature.
So that's a lot, I mean, I feel like I'll speak on behalf of all of us and say, at a certain point it gets overwhelming, and how do you really know? And so our goal for our listeners is really to provide them with the tips, tools, and strategies that they can make their own intelligent, research-based decisions. So I'm going to jump in here real quick and say that this was a topic in our family. And how do you know if you are truly purchasing organic, grass-fed meat items or protein items? And now it's not enough just to have it say grass fed. You have to have the added word of grass finished. So again, I'm just going to share with you a tool that I use. Again, nothing that we share on here is an endorsement for any one thing, but I feel like I put my trust in a company called Butcher Box, and I feel really comfortable that the proteins that I purchase there for my family, that it is organic, grass fed, and grass finished. So that would be an example of how you can just kind of cut through the noise. You heard what Paula said about the CAFOs. It truly sounds absolutely disgusting. And if you are somebody who is interested in looking for it, there are ways that you can purchase better choices. Again, we're not endorsing any company. We're just sharing with you the tools that we have found along the way. All right. And I will make sure, as I'm writing down all of your questions, that I follow up with the tools that I have stumbled across, or like Paula's come across with those books and whatnot. You can have all of them. All right. Our next question.
I just wanted to add one quick thing about the grass fed and the grass finished. They've gotten even tricky with even that distinction, and why it needs to say both now, because what they used to do is, or what they've always done, I should say, is when a calf is first born, it can't eat grain, it would die. It has to start off on the mother's milk, nursing, and then it goes to grass. And so the tricky way to get around kind of that whole is they just say, well, it was fed grass. It may have only been for a couple of weeks of its life, but that's how they get around it. So if it has to say grass fed, grass finished to mean it really was living on a grass diet through its life.
Yeah. It's fascinating how the marketing gets to be so slippery. It's no wonder all of us are so confused. But the good news, you guys, is that we have people like Paula that are really getting into it. People like myself who really focus in on this topic. And as I mentioned, we will pass along all of our resources. I did see a note there that ButcherBox doesn't ship to Canada. I'll do a little bit of investigating, and maybe Paula can take a look into that as well. But I do want you to know that there are responses to these issues. We just have to, be really mindful of where the research is, and how to possibly, if you're interested in doing something different. Okay, we have a couple more, and I want to make sure that we save time for the homework that we delivered last week, and so we can put it into practice. Paula, that was such a great slide. And again, this will be in your summary. You have 3 ways to identify organic, GMO, or conventional in the grocery store, but a listener would like to know, what about the number 6? Are you familiar with the number 6?
No, I don't know what the significance of that is off the top of my head in a starting out for a produce item. I can do a quick little search and see what I come up with.
So while you're doing that, let me just do a quick review. If you are somebody who is interested, and I'll show you a slide that you're going to get at the end about the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. If you are wanting to investigate organic, you're going to be looking for a 5-digit code. It's the sticker on the produce, and it will start with the number 9. Again, you don't have to write any of this down. I'll make sure you get it. If you are interested in whether or not what you are putting in your basket, if it's conventionally grown, it's going to have a number 3 or a number 4. And then finally, if you are interested in something that you're putting in your basket, knowing whether or not it was GMO, the first number is going to be the number 8. Okay. So again, you don't have to write it down, just a little bit of a recap there. All right, Paula, maybe we can answer that one, because I want to make sure that we save time. Is vegetable wash okay?
Yeah, I use a veggie wash myself, and I really think that it makes a big difference with certain with certain items, I can actually see the stuff kind of come off of it. That's kind of unusual. But grapes to me are one of the worst offenders of being really heavily sprayed. You know how they always kind of have like a white coating?
Yes.
You really feel it with your fingers if you try to like pick them up. And so the white coating and the water looks kind of muddy after I've soaked my grapes in like veggie wash and let them sit a little bit, even the organic ones. That's one thing I really only buy organic. I don't ever buy conventional anymore.
What is the
So
vegetable wash that you use for?
it's just called veggie wash. I
It
get
is.
it's available at Trader Joe's or Whole Foods, and I'm sure there's different versions of it kind of out there. There's also recipes online that I've seen to make your own homemade veggie wash if that's preferable. But I
Ooh,
think it's a good
how about if
idea.
I'll task myself and I'll put that in the summary for y'all. I'll find us a nice healthy DIY veggie wash and I'll put that in there. Okay. All right. We have two pretty good ones, questions that is, and maybe literally we have to answer them fairly quickly to be able to go over what we need to go over. There is a controversy right now with kale. Paula, are you familiar with the controversy with kale? Is the first question. And then the second question from the same listener is a question about lemon water enhancing our alkalinity in the body. Is it favorable or not? So you can pick or choose either one of those questions. You can defer. You can hit them both quickly, whatever you choose.
Tell me more about kale. I'm not sure what this latest controversy that Edna is referring to. So Edna, write a little bit more about that controversy because you have my interest.
Yeah, Dave Asprey, I'm familiar. Dave Asprey is really doing a tout on social media about some proponents or components of kale that may or may not be good for us. So I feel like I could that is like a rabbit hole. I feel like we could spend a lot of time on the controversy of kale because do the benefits outweigh what he's suggesting? Edna is the listener, and she said, "I saw it on the internet." Edna, I did too, and here's what I'm going to say about that. I'm going to give Paula a chance to take a look. I'm going to share with her what you and I are referencing, and we'll see whether or not she can debunk it or kind of comment on it. Okay. For that one. How about the lemon water? Anything that you want to say about that?
Yeah. So there's a lot of talk in the cancer community, especially about in the health community, but it definitely gets even exacerbated and highlighted in the cancer community about acid and alkalinity in the body and how acidity contributes to a cancerous condition. Well, there's something that you need to understand, kind of sort of in a way to understand this lemon water issue. The pH of our body, of our blood, can't be altered. It has a very, very tight range. And if you alter the pH of your blood, you would die pretty quickly. It's really that dramatic and drastic. So the overall pH of your body has to remain a stable level. The alkalinity and acidity of other substances, saliva and urine, can be affected by what we eat, but the pH level of your body and the acidity or alkalinity is a set tight range, and it doesn't vary. If it varies, it's dangerous and a life-threatening situation. So lemon water is a great thing. Again, lemons are a heavily sprayed item, so that's another organic only product. But lemon water is a great thing. It helps stimulate your digestive juices. It helps kind of kick gives your liver a little bit of a wake up call to kind of do its job a little bit better. So it's great for the organs to kind of have a little like, hello, sunshine, it's time to get to work today. And so it's that kind of a gentle, lovely wake up call to some of those organs to kind of start working for you. And I think it's a lovely thing to do to start your day, whether it's, in room temp water, hot water. Some people like to have like a tea, almost like hot water with lemon. That's great. But it's not going to change your overall alkalinity or acidity. It might change these pockets and have some impact there, but it's not going to change your overall alkalinity or acidity. And the acidity that's associated with cancer is a result of the fermentation that these deranged cells, the cancer cells, they undergo fermentation instead of creating energy in the normal way. And so it creates a microenvironment of acidity right around that area. That's a function of the cancer cell itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Good, really good answer. All right. So I just typed in the Q&A. We will get you the latest on the kale controversy. I was wondering if somebody was going to bring that up. Like I said, Dave Asprey is somebody who's on the forefront of lots of nutrition chat. And again, we want to make sure that the information that we're sharing here, there's that it is in fact research-based and it's sound, solid information. I happen to really like where he goes with nutrition, but that's not to say that it's something that I would say, like, if my loved one was on the cancering journey, that I would sign up for everything, that this particular person shares. So I'm putting my faith in where you've been, Paula, and we'll share the what we know about that.
Can't wait to dig into that.
All right. So it's about that time. You guys did a great job with your questions. As always, we will follow it up with that recording. We will follow it up with the takeaway. We will follow it up with, I'm excited to find you a great DIY veggie wash, but I want to put what we learned about today into practice. For me, my passion is really about taking the overwhelming information that we have and really making sure that we can, know what exactly to do with it. So if you are somebody who was with us before and you, for last class, and you received the 3-day food journal, what I did was I just filled it out for a make-believe day. Okay. So if you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, no worries. You will be able to access us and send us an email and say, Stacy, I didn't get that 3-day food journal. But what I asked you all to do was to print it out and just record every bite, lick, and taste. And we're going to use this as our running example to teach you how to take the overwhelming research and put it into practice when you go to the grocery store. So real quick, let's take a look at this. And again, I'll guide us since we're running out of time here. But this breakfast, it had blueberries, it had oatmeal, and it had milk in it. Kind of a typical breakfast, right, Paula? It's got, we threw some blueberries, we cooked our oatmeal. We don't know what kind of oatmeal it was. And then we maybe prepared that oatmeal with milk or water, right? So in this case, based on today, now remember, there's always a place to go. We're making micro changes that don't completely set you crazy trying to figure out keeping notes and recording. So for today, my whole food could look like those blueberries, right? My whole food could look like that oatmeal, right? And then this milk conversation. So for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Paula, do I have it right just for my little micro change today? I'm going to go to the grocery store and I'm going to pick up the blueberries that have the sticker on it with the number 9. Is that right, Paula?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. My oatmeal, I know that falls under that grain category. I need to make sure that that's organic as well. And I also know one more thing. I feel like, and I'm checking with Paula, that steel cut oatmeal is maybe a better choice. Organic, of course. Do I have that right?
Yep, that's the closer to the whole grain,
right.
Less processed. Yep.
And Paula, I'm going to put milk. I really like milk on top of my oatmeal. I know that dairy products are not necessarily the best for me if I'm on the cancering journey. Would it be okay? Could I maybe swap out maybe that goat milk for example, just like a little bit of a treat? I know that it's probably not a great choice, but if I just wanted to use a little bit, I could use that. I forgot the name of it already. What is it? The AF1?
A2 milk?
A2 milk or the goat milk to top it. Would that be all right?
You could try those and see how your body reacts. It's really individual. A person has to listen to their body. And if they're having inflammatory responses, they have to honor that. And you can also swap out for something like, coconut milk that has some healthy fats in there to balance out, because blueberries, oatmeal, and milk, that's a really high glycemic meal. And we're going to get into that next month with carbs, but that's a really high glycemic meal that isn't balanced by fat or protein right now. So we'll talk about doing those things and those next steps, but
we're just making making
swap.
those little changes, right? And so moving down the line again real quick, I've got my apple in there that I'm going to make sure that it's organic. I'm going to make sure that my spinach and any other salad greens or anything that's in that salad is organic, along particularly with the strawberries. And then I'm also going to get rid of that balsamic vinaigrette dressing and the barbecue marinade, because I know that that's processed. And I'm going to try to find some really good recipes that have, a homemade recipe, as opposed to picking things with heavy sugar, heavy salt, and whatnot. So just to give you guys an idea of how to start making those little changes from the summary that you're going to receive, I want to encourage you to take your 3-day food journal, and I want you to go ahead and highlight the places that you're willing to, and you think that it's not going to be that big of a hardship to make some changes, and see if you can, when you go to the grocery store this week, just find 1 or 2 things that you can replace that maybe would be a little bit better for you. Again, as I mentioned, I'm going to send you an actual image of the clean, the dirty dozen, and the clean 15, and you will be able to choose the ones that, and what that document is telling you which ones are a really good idea to choose organic, and which ones are okay to buy conventional because they've got a thick skin to it. So I'm going to look real quick and see if we have any burning questions or comments before we leave. Susie says, please make sure I get the information from the last meeting. Susie, you should have gotten that in an email, but I'm making a note that you did not. And so we will resend. And let's see. Wendy did not get that 3-day food tracker either. I'm writing that down as well. So listen, I got you. Paula's got you. We got 2 classes under our belt. Let me tell you what's coming for the next 2 classes. Really good stuff. It is the carbohydrate conversation, and it's carbohydrates, the good, bad, and the ugly. And we're going to break that down. So be on the lookout. And for those of you who are listening today, if I missed your question, please know that you can have at me directly, Stacy, STACY, at believebig.org. I will respond to you within 24 hours, I promise. I want to say thank you for joining us. I'll speak on behalf of Paula and myself, all of the Believe Big team. We are so grateful that you are trusting us with an hour of your time, and we hope that you find the information valuable, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. See you in February.